For decades, the middle class represented stability. A house, a reliable car, a yearly vacation, a retirement account. The belief that if you worked hard, life would slowly improve over time. That was the promise. And for a long time, millions of people believed it completely. Go to school, get a good job, work consistently, buy a home, save carefully, retire comfortably. But something strange has happened over the past 2 decades. Millions of middle-class families are now earning more money than previous generations ever did, while somehow feeling financially weaker than ever before. People with decent salaries feel anxious constantly. Groceries feel expensive. Housing feels impossible. Debt keeps growing. Retirement feels uncertain. And even successful professionals increasingly describe themselves as financially trapped. The middle class is not disappearing dramatically overnight. It's being slowly squeezed from every direction at the same time, quietly. And many people don't fully realize how serious the situation has become because the process happens gradually enough to feel normal. Today, I'm going to explain why the middle class is quietly being destroyed. The financial forces most people underestimate. The psychological traps making modern life increasingly expensive. And why millions of people who appear financially stable on the outside are secretly under enormous pressure behind closed doors. Because once you understand how this system works, you start seeing the pressure everywhere. Let's begin with the most important shift of all. The cost of survival has increased dramatically. Not luxury, not extravagance. Basic middle-class life itself. Housing, healthcare, education, insurance, childcare, transportation. The foundational costs of ordinary life have exploded. And for many families, income has not kept pace. This creates the first major problem, destroying the middle class. People now spend enormous portions of their income simply maintaining normal life. A generation ago, many middle-class families could survive on one income. Today, even dual-income households often feel financially stretched. Not because they're irresponsible, because the baseline cost structure changed completely. A home that once required 3 years of salary may now require 7 or 8. College costs that once seemed manageable now create decades of debt. Healthcare costs continue rising. Insurance premiums continue rising. Childcare costs continue rising. And unlike luxury spending, these expenses are difficult to avoid. This creates permanent financial pressure. The middle class increasingly lives in a state of low-level financial anxiety, not poverty, but fragility. One emergency, one layoff, one medical issue, one recession, and many families suddenly discover how little financial margin actually exists. That's one of the defining characteristics of the modern middle class, the appearance of stability without the protection of stability. From the outside, life still looks normal. The house exists, the car exists, the vacations appear online, but behind the scenes, many families are carrying large mortgages, rising debt, minimal savings, retirement insecurity, and constant stress about future costs. And social media makes this dramatically worse, because modern life has become performative. People no longer simply live middle-class lifestyles. They feel pressured to display them publicly. Vacations, renovations, luxury purchases, designer products, perfect family experiences. The pressure to appear financially successful has quietly become part of middle-class culture itself. And this creates a dangerous cycle. People increase spending to maintain social appearance, while simultaneously reducing long-term financial security. This is one reason lifestyle inflation has become so destructive. As income rises, expenses immediately rise alongside it. Raises disappear into larger homes, nicer cars, better schools, subscriptions, dining, convenience spending, upgraded lifestyles everywhere. And because each upgrade feels normal individually, people rarely notice how financially dependent they've become. The modern middle class is often trapped between two competing realities. They earn too much to feel poor, but not enough to feel secure. And that psychological tension is exhausting. Many people now experience something previous generations rarely faced at this scale: middle-class burnout. People work longer hours than ever before just to maintain lifestyles that feel increasingly unstable. Many professionals are not building freedom. They're maintaining systems, mortgage systems, debt systems, subscription systems, school systems, insurance systems, lifestyle systems. And because fixed costs are so high, stepping off the treadmill becomes terrifying. This creates the illusion of success without actual flexibility. Someone earning $180,000 annually may still feel trapped because their lifestyle requires nearly every dollar they earn. That's not wealth. That's dependency disguised as success. And the system quietly encourages this behavior constantly. Modern economies depend heavily on consumption. People are encouraged to finance lifestyles, upgrade continuously, normalize debt, buy emotionally, and define success through visible consumption. Buy now, pay later. 84-month car loans, financed furniture, monthly payment culture. Everything is structured to make expensive lifestyles feel temporarily affordable, but debt changes future income before it even arrives. Every payment reduces future flexibility, and eventually, people wake up realizing large portions of their paycheck are already committed before they even get paid. This creates another major middle-class problem: the disappearance of financial margin. Margin is the space between income and obligations, and without margin, people lose resilience. No emergency cushion, no ability to leave toxic jobs, no ability to absorb financial shocks comfortably. The middle class increasingly survives month to month at a much higher income level than previous generations expected. That's why so many six-figure earners still report financial stress. Not because they lack income, but because the structure of modern middle-class life became extraordinarily expensive to maintain. Housing alone illustrates this perfectly. For many people, buying a home no longer feels like building wealth. It feels like surviving a financial war. Down payments are enormous. Interest rates matter massively. Property taxes continue rising. Insurance continues rising. Repairs continue rising. And because housing became deeply tied to financial identity, many families stretch themselves dangerously thin, trying to buy homes that symbolize stability. But oversized financial commitments often reduce stability instead of increasing it. The larger the fixed costs, the smaller the margin for error. This is why many middle-class families feel one crisis away from serious financial damage. The structure itself became fragile, and retirement anxiety makes this even worse. For previous generations, retirement often felt more predictable. Pensions existed more frequently. Housing costs were lower relative to income. College debt was smaller. Today, millions of middle-class workers are responsible for funding retirement almost entirely themselves. At the exact same time, they're dealing with expensive housing, childcare, healthcare costs, aging parents, inflation, and rising daily expenses. This creates enormous psychological pressure during middle age. Many people begin realizing in their 40s and 50s that despite decades of hard work, they are financially behind. That realization is terrifying because retirement is no longer an abstract future event. It becomes mathematically visible, and many people discover they spent years building appearances instead of assets. The modern middle class also faces something emotionally exhausting: comparison overload. For most of human history, people compared themselves to local communities. Now, people compare themselves to millions of curated online lifestyles every day, and this permanently distorts financial expectations. Average people now feel financially unsuccessful, while living lifestyles previous generations would have considered luxurious. Because the definition of normal keeps escalating online. Luxury apartments become normalized. Frequent travel becomes normalized. Designer lifestyles become normalized. And people unconsciously spend more trying to keep pace with standards that are financially unsustainable for most households. This creates emotional spending loops that quietly destroy long-term wealth. People feel stressed, so they consume. They feel insecure, so they upgrade. They feel behind, so they finance lifestyles they haven't actually earned yet. And debt becomes emotional anesthesia, temporary comfort, long-term pressure. There's another major force quietly destroying the middle class: time poverty. Many middle-class families are no longer just financially stretched. They are mentally exhausted, working full-time, managing children, managing bills, managing schedules, managing debt, managing constant digital stimulation. And when people become mentally exhausted, financial decision-making usually worsens. Convenient spending increases. Impulse spending increases. Long-term planning decreases. People stop optimizing for the future because they're overwhelmed surviving the present. That's one reason modern convenience industries exploded. Food delivery, subscription services, instant financing, on-demand everything. The system monetizes exhaustion. And exhausted people rarely make optimal financial decisions consistently. The result is a middle class that often feels permanently busy while making less long-term progress than expected. And this creates something psychologically dangerous: quiet hopelessness. Many people begin feeling, no matter how hard I work, I never get ahead. That mindset changes behavior dramatically. Saving feels less meaningful. Planning feels less motivating. Long-term thinking weakens. And when people lose belief in future progress, consumption often increases because short-term comfort becomes emotionally more rewarding than delayed financial goals. This is one reason many people feel financially stuck despite earning decent incomes. The system increasingly rewards consumption while making long-term wealth building emotionally harder to sustain. But here's the important part most people miss. The middle class is not being destroyed by one single event. It's being weakened slowly through thousands of small pressures happening simultaneously. Rising costs, debt normalization, lifestyle inflation, social comparison, housing pressure, retirement anxiety, subscription culture, financial exhaustion. Individually, each pressure seems manageable. Together, they create permanent instability. And this instability changes how people live psychologically. People delay having children, delay retirement, delay home ownership, delay freedom. Entire life trajectories shift under financial pressure. But despite all of this, there's something critical to understand. Financial security still remains possible. The people who adapt successfully to modern financial reality often follow very different rules than previous generations did. They focus heavily on reducing fixed costs, avoiding lifestyle inflation, building financial margin, investing consistently, and defining success independently from social comparison. Because in modern life, flexibility has become more valuable than appearance. The people who quietly build wealth today often look surprisingly ordinary. They avoid excessive lifestyle expansion, avoid debt-driven status, avoid upgrading every aspect of life simultaneously. And instead of asking, how wealthy do I appear? They ask, how financially resilient am I really? That question changes everything. Because the people who survive financially long-term are not necessarily the people earning the most. They're often the people who protected margin while the world constantly encouraged them to consume it. That's the real battle facing the modern middle class. Not simply earning more money, but resisting a system designed to absorb every dollar they make.